60s, but I knew this wasn't I wasn't growing. So he takes a job for like 30 grand a year equivalent with General Foods. I said, why'd you do it? He goes, because I wanted to become, I wanted to grow. He was thinking about the next version of himself. What do you notice that's odd about this time my dad had at General Foods? Anybody can see anything, it's right in front of you. What do you see? Against what? The number of jobs against what? The number of years. Do the math on that. Do you think somebody that has a next version of himself mindset is ready to do a job for a year and eight months and then go, I'm on to the next job? He told me he had a law at General Foods. It was take the points, take the money. And take the points meant take the next job in the HR point system. He said, take the points, take the money. If they offer me something new, take it. If they offer me something new, take it. And a few weeks ago, I was in White Plains, New York, in and out, and I drove past my dad's old office building. And I was just thinking about it. I'm like, that was where my dad hit 15 years with 10 different jobs. What's the last job he had up there? Do you see it? My dad was a division sales manager of a $1.6 billion division and worked his way up. There's a story just in that one thing about the next version of you. And it says, take opportunity, lean into the challenges. What's a corollary for our industry of that one thing? Ranks. Go. Don't get stuck in the same spot. What's the next version of you at ASEA? It's your next rank. And by the way, please don't think these principles only apply to ASEA. Pick the rank you want in your life. What's the next rank in life for you? What's greater significance or success for you? Now, he leaves General Foods. You might say, well, why would a guy that's running the largest division at the time of General Foods leave General Foods? You know why? He went and said, I want to run a larger division, and they said, we probably won't happen here. He goes, okay, I'm leaving. Where did he go? He told me we were moving to Ohio. I lived 20 minutes outside of New York. And I went to like cornfields, which I loved. I love Ohio, but I didn't like the idea when he brought it home. But notice he went from running a $1.6 billion division to what? A $500 million entire company. I said, Dad, why'd you do that? Why would you leave it? And by the way, question mark, is Hobart the same as General Foods? Question. What does Hobart make? Do you guys know? They make huge commercial kitchen equipment. Big slicers, walk-in fridges, huge mixers that can mix meat. They're so big, right? Is that the same thing as Kool-Aid? No. So he left consumer goods, and what was the next version of him? I'm going to learn the food service industry. He was the president of the U.S. Food Service Association, having worked at Hobart. So then he says, you know what? I've learned for 5 years how to run a large business. Guess who came calling again? Kraft. And now he's running the whole channel. He's not over sales. He's the VP of the whole channel. So he repurposed himself and rewrote the next version of himself. And ultimately ended up becoming the head of strategy for a $36 billion company. Now, this is key. He hits the retirement button at 57, which turning 49 last week, I'm like, that's pretty early to retire, right? So Dad retires, I think he's done. And then he starts to consult using his processes, the same stuff that he had taught to me. But here's what's interesting. He comes back to me and says, I'm going to go run a biotech company. And I go, what? He goes, I'm going to go run a biotech company for Farmland National Beef. I said, Dad, Kraft macaroni and cheese is not a biotech product. He's like, I'll figure it out. I'll learn it. During this time of running the biotech company, he worked with Narayana Naidu. Many of you know who Dr. Naidu is. And Dr. Naidu was talking to me and said, Tyler, your dad is the only person I ever knew who would ask for a book, who would ask for something to learn, and the next time we met, he had read it and was asking me very intelligent questions about science. He goes, I've never seen anyone like it. Now, my dad at this point, bored still, but his whole mindset was the next version. It was always the next version. It was never about, I've arrived. It was never about, like, this is good enough. And it wasn't like this insatiable narcissistic desire. It was just learning. It was growing. It was like, what's next? This is really fun. What's next? This is really fun. Let's keep going. Now, obviously, that all leads to the early stages of seed. He would not have been able to see the patents. He would not have been able to understand the research associated with us being here in Mexico if he hadn't been focused on the next version of himself 40 years ago. See, these journeys of you becoming the next version of you are liberating to others. We are evidence today of such. And someone else's journey on the next version of themselves liberates and invites others to the same. It's like a custom wedding invitation that says, what's the next version? Come on, let's go. Most jobs are long straightaways that don't allow for that kind of liberation. They're just long straightaways. They're a grind. And that's okay. I'm not down on that. I'm just saying we were born to recreate ourselves. We were born for the next version. Look at all the pictures I just showed to you. A son graduating, reaching a certain experience with athletics or something they want to do, learning how to shoot and being comfortable missing to learn how to make it. These are all next versions. They're all pointing to the next version. Ellie, getting calls from universities about running track. Next version. Caleb submitting his mission papers to go on a 2-year mission like his older brother did. They're already in. I'm waiting 2 weeks to find out where in the world he's going to go. He's making a choice about the next version of himself. And these choices are creative. By that I mean they create your future. They're very powerful. So, when we talk about my dad, how old was he when he started to see it? Anyone know? My dad was 69 years old when he started what we're enjoying here. Can you please let that settle for a minute? Which means what? How does that apply to the next version concept? Don't tell me you're too old. I thought the last chapter in my dad's book was going to be really messy. Like, what are you doing? This is salt water. Right? Are you kidding me? And you know what? He says to me all the time, last 10 years, best 10 years. The guy Bob Goff, who wrote the book, talks about the next version of you. He says in one of his interviews, because once I get into somebody, I go deep on it. He says, I think of the first 10 years as Bob number 1. Then from 10 to 20 was Bob number 2. And then from 20 to 30 was Bob number 3. And he goes, and I like to think in those blocks and say, I'm on Bob number 7. This is awesome. I'm going to the next Bob. And I think, isn't that amazing? My dad at 69, I'm telling my dad, hey, slow down. Enjoy this. You've busted your tail. And guess what? For my dad, the outcome was never income. The outcome was always become. It was just like, let's go. There's more. Let's keep going. What's amazing to me, it is humbling to the point of causing my throat to lock, is looking at you now. Because one person, that's why when I did that song for his retirement that you've heard, One Life, I'm like, wow, one life can make a difference. One person deciding that to commit to the next version of themselves can open up 1,000 opportunities for others to become the next version and best version of themselves. Now here's a challenge. What if you stop thinking about your next version? What if all the meetings you're having are about the iPhone 4? What if your depression or anxiety or frustration or disappointment about life is because the iPhone 7 didn't work out and you just can't get over it? What if my dad had done that? We wouldn't be here. You gotta think about this. You gotta come to terms with what the next version looks like. So, with that in mind, I want you to consider that he never stopped working and discovering the next version of himself. He called me 2 weeks ago. He says, I think I'm going to buy a different house. And he goes, I'm actually going to downsize, but for these reasons. Like, he's still thinking, it's just a reflex now. Like, what's next? You know, he said to me 6 months ago, I think I want to build like a family reunion place. He's got 40 acres, there's water running through. He's like, you know what? I think I'm going to build this. And he's like, the mindset is the next version. He goes, because gathering is a really important principle. I'm like, wow, Dad, that's amazing. Are you sure you want to tackle that? He's like, what are you talking about? I want to tackle this. Quit talking like that. Let's talk about the place. So his mindset is always looking forward. So let's talk about this from a becoming perspective. Let's talk about your becoming. I don't care if you're Trish or Denny or any of the big leaders in this room that everyone thinks, well, they are there. No, they're not. Absolutely disagree with that. Because if that were the case, Vertus would have never started a seal. What did he keep pushing for? By all accounts, his net worth and his personal financial situation was a lock. I'm talking fixed income or cash positions for the rest of his life and no change to lifestyle. That doesn't mean jack to me. It means zero. Let's go. What's the next version? The outcome has become. So we're going to go through an exercise. What's the next version of you? I want you to pull this out. Okay, this is no game. This is real stuff. What is the next version of you? And here's my first question you have to answer. I don't care if you go U plus 5 or U plus 10. Doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter. I think U plus 1, a little tight. How about U plus 5? Deal?
Tyler?
Yes, ma'am?
What do you mean by U plus 5? U plus 5 years?
Yeah, U plus 5 years. So I'm 49, this is me 54. I'm going to tell you right now, you want to know, Pepper, what I think about with me at 54? Oh my gosh. That little Henry is going to be 5 years old. The golden age of little kids for me is like, everyone says terrible twos. You guys are nuts. I love 2-year-olds. I love 2 to 5 a lot. Fact of the matter is I love 2 to 18 a lot. But 2 to 5, oh my gosh. Like me plus 5, I'm fishing with this little kid. Like I'm stealing him from his parents, abduction. Like there's a lot going through my mind. Like what is this going to look like? How do I want to use my money to make that happen? How do I want to use any opportunity? It's no different than you're inviting me to South Africa. I'm taking Noah. Why? Because me plus 5 doesn't have Noah in my life. You know where I'm going. U plus 5 doesn't just tell you about the future. It tells me about now. It says I can't sit around wasting time today because my plus 5 vision is compelling. My plus 5 vision, I can pull up on my iPad right now an image that I've drawn out inside one of those little drawing apps where I'm like, oh my gosh, I track my plus 5s and I'm like, I'm 5 years away. 2 years ago I was on a plane, I'm like, I got 2 years with Caleb. Guess where I took my golfing son this year? We went to the Masters. We went to the Masters golf tournament for 3-4 days straight. We played Pinehurst, thank you Mr. Weens. And Paul, and you know, why am I doing that? Because I know in plus 5, that dude's gone. And I see him just a few times a year. We gotta be thinking this way. So here's question 1. Please pull out a pen. Please do this in Chinese, in Spanish, in English. Question 1, who do you want to become plus 5? Just write a few things down, and if you're comfortable, I'm gonna ask Kim and Veronica to help me with mics. And we'll share this. Who do you want to become in the next 5 years? Take a minute and write it out. Just bullet points. You can even just write out bullet points. It can be narrative. So just get into this for a minute. 5 out, plus 5. What does it look like? Who do you want to become? A little cheat tip. Focus on who. Focus on who. Sometimes people pivot off the front end of the question and start talking about the whys, or just give me the who. Who do you want to be? I want to be grandpa. I want to be Grandpa Ty. I want to be an available grandpa. That's who, right? I want to be present with the rest of the time I have with my kids at home. I want to be a better husband to my beloved wife, Allison, right? That's the stuff I want to, the who. Get into the who, not the band. Okay, one more minute, and then I'm going to ask for some people just to share a few thoughts, just to help us. I feel like I'm in a nightclub right now. Okay. Who's willing to share a few things you jotted down? You're all network marketers. Like, getting you to talk is not a hard thing. Getting you to stop is like amazing. Right up here in front, would you be sure to stand up, introduce yourself, where you're from, and just share the few things. And this is who do you want to become. This is you plus 5.
My name is Patty Stalin. I'm from Delaware. I'm in Alan Noble's group. And me plus 5, and let me just preface, I did a course a few years ago called Quantum Leaping, where they took you into your next version of you, if you will. And I still have that vision in my head, what I was wearing, where I was living, and how I was feeling more important.
Cool,
okay?
cool. Thank you for saying that.
So me plus 5, the person I know that I'm capable of being,
Good.
I will be there. The person people look to for help physically and financially, that's really been pretty exciting so far.
Very cool.
And a house and a water for my family, for my husband and my children and future grandchildren. And just so you know, because I am in the room, 8 months ago we took the leap of faith and moved to the beach. But I'm 6 miles away, so me plus 5 is on that water.
You got to cover that 6 miles. That's great. Thank you. Let's hear some more. I'm just going to let you guys find them. Kim, why don't you alternate? Kim, you find one, and Veronica, you find the next. Hi, Sylvie.
Hi. Each time I come to this event, I don't know what it is, but you make me cry. Last year was the challenge. We're talking about challenging yourself. This year is the version. It's been now 5 years, and as I said, I'm 13. So there was a version of me 5 years ago, and I'm going to my second version. It's tough because
We love you, Sylvie. You're safe.
I know. I was my husband. And my better version is first to be healthy for my family. In 5 years, I will be 60 years old. And my mother didn't make 63. So I want to be healthy for my family. I want to be a better wife. Because I know sometimes I'm tough. I'm a pain, okay? I'm not. I'm French and I'm stubborn. So, with the mixed language, I'm not always prison of what my husband wants me to hear. My mind go my own way. And sometimes I know it's great conflict. And so I want to be a better wife for my husband and for my children. 5 years ago, we never thought we would be where we are. My husband often asked me, where do you want to go? We need to move. And now in 5 years, we just moved 1 month ago to where we wanted to be. We moved to Boise.
Yeah, Boise.
Yeah. My husband still makes a lot of sacrifice because he's still in Los Angeles. Moving in a trailer because we don't have a home there. But he makes so much sacrifice, and I want first give up in front of everybody and tell him I appreciate what he does. And in 5 years, we're going to be this beautiful home, creating a new life for our family and having our girls moving there, hopefully, with us. And this is my version of us. It's to be a family who's full of joy, healthy, sharing something that I love to do. And it's not always the passion of my husband, but it's my passion, and he respects that. And living the life, sharing with others, and this next version is going to be, yeah, pretty much
If you were a
incredible.
stock, I would buy your stock and I would hold it. I believe it. Thank you, Sylvie. Hey, Doc. Make sure you introduce yourself to everybody. Not everyone knows you.
I'm Aaron Kaufman. I'm from Albuquerque, actually Cedar Crest, New Mexico.
Yay, Doc. Thank you, Sylvie. If I was there, I'd give you a big hug. Thank you, Paul.
Grossly speaking, I'd like to, in 5 years, be at least Ambassador Diamond, a global leader in the SEA.
Yeah, I like that.
But a lot of who I feel like I'm becoming is very spiritual. And so, on my own and through this organization and all of you, I intend to expand my consciousness and be closer to the divine inside myself.
I hope you got a few more pages. You're flipping. I'm excited. So far, you're 2 for 2.
And to be much more visionary, and especially to be more flexible with myself, what you were talking about, to my image and my concept of myself, and to be able to change and let go on a dime. In fact, no, in midair.
In midair, I love that. Thank you, Aaron. We love you. One or two more. Tim, you have one? Anybody up here? Oh, there's Hugh, okay?
I'm Hugh Jennings, and when I was sailing, I went through some incredible adventures, and I want to me plus 5 is to give those adventures to my grandkids.
Amazing.
I want to be the best partner I can with my soulmate.
You got a good one.
Yeah, I do. I'm blessed. And I have a vision of being the genesis of 1,000 thousandaires.
I love that. Write that one down, Hugh. I'm a fan. Thank you. Okay, let's do one more, and then we'll pivot to the next question. These have been great. Thank you. Make sure you
Hi.
introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Kathy Rossman. I'm from Grand Junction, Colorado. And in 5 years, the next version of me, after hearing these statistics and looking at my paper where I am with the SEA, I want to be a leader of leaders.
Love it. Well said, Kathy. Thank you. Give her a round of applause. Thank you for sharing some of those thoughts and insights. I challenge you guys. I use my plane time, which Chuck very clearly said we're all going to have some. I use my plane time to reconnect with me plus 5. I didn't call it me plus 5, but I spend a lot of time mapping out and going, wow, where am I? What does the next 5 look like? And it helps you to become more present. Oddly enough, isn't it kind of ironic? You would have to start thinking about you in 5 to start becoming more available and present today. But it's a really cool kind of irony that really is true. Let's go to the next question I want you to work on for a second. And it's why, in 5 years, why do you do what you do? Now, some of you shared that already, that's fine. But just go a little deeper on the why for me. You plus 5, why do you do what you do? Think about Virtus for 1 second, guys. Virtus, I could have easily said at age 69, if Dad said, you know what, I want to build an organization that takes a core technology to the world that the world needs. And then 5 years out, it's been reasonably successful. You're 74 years old, and you say, why do you do it? My dad's answers would be very interesting, right? It would have been very little self-interest at that point. It would have been like, because we're helping people, because it's truly had an impact on people. So spend a few minutes on that. Let's throw down some sweet club music to get you feeling like you're in a club tonight. And then let's go why. Why do we do what we do? Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm going to tighten up the window, maybe another minute. This music's really helping me in and out, I can tell. I do what I do because the music moves me. That's my why. Okay, 30 seconds, and then Kim and Veronica, if you guys can help me with mics. Okay, so we're going to do 4, Kim. You pick 2, and Veronica, you pick 2. We'll start with Kim over here. Okay, you can kill the house music, literally.
I am Hannah from Salem, Mass. I am 69 years old. I have had the opportunity to look back 33 years on Tyler's journeys. I told you this last night on the linear line. I've gone through the spirituality. I found spirituality from my brother as he died. He told me, you can do great things. I couldn't be on your product in 2016, but you go find yourself, and you will become that magnanimous woman. And I have gone from that linear line to that divine sphere of personal, with passion from my heart, my professional, and now it's all coming together. And I am now going to my medical doctors and saying, okay, we're mapping out my life from 69 to 96.
A girl.
And I've taken to the 5 years, and now I'm here as a guest. And I am mapping it down to weekly, to daily, to living in the moment, the divine moment of where we are. It's a blessing to be here.
Thank you so
Tyler,
much.
and
That's
thank you.
beautiful. Thank you. Oh, you're from? Okay, introduce yourself.
Charles Burgundy from Tifton, Georgia, and I'm 65 years old, and I've been playing the version 1 long enough. I was introduced to the Big 8 company when I was 30, and I fell in love with that concept of Zeke saying, if you help enough other people get what you want, get what they want, you have what you want. Unfortunately, with that company, you couldn't be honest. If you told them what it was, they wouldn't listen. And if you didn't tell them what it was, you were lying to them. So it's really hard to build a business when you don't know what to tell people. But I did that for 5 years. But I'm still living that failure every day in my life, thinking about why I can't go share a network marketing company with people, because I have that failure mentality in my mind still from 35 years ago.
iPhone 3.
So the other thing is, if you've ever wondered why you do what you do, I've been on that for all my life trying to figure out. There was a glass ceiling. I just could not get through it. I would get up to it, and then I would self-sabotage myself because I guess I was afraid. But I've since finally learned that everything I do now is not my decision. 99% of what I do every day are programs that are in me. From birth, from the time I was raised up, and then also from experiences. And I've been working really hard on myself to get to the point where I reprogram those paradigms that are running my life so that they run towards success and not keep repeating the failures.
Yes,
So,
yes,
Tyler, you have just spoken to me from a standpoint of the integrity of this company. I truly can go out and share with people now and not be afraid that I'll be embarrassed again or that the company will go away. So thank you for that.
Where are we here? Kim, right there.
Hi, my name's Janelle. I'm from Australia.
Yay!
Yeah! So, yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm fairly new to ASEA. Been on a bit of a full-on health journey over the last 3 years, which has, has smashed my confidence a little bit, but ASEA coming into my life has changed that. I really believe that the ASEA's got some spiritual, magical stuff inside of it as well that's opened consciousness inside of me. So that's really opened up that side of me and why I do what I do. I've always been in service to people, in the health industry, but now I believe with ASEA, I'm so in alignment and that it's going to enable me to help to reach my full potential as a person, because I've been playing a little bit small, and in order to reaching my full potential is going to inspire others to reach their full potential, and that's what I think is going to be exciting, because the world's in crisis, and we, each person in this room, we can help the world to become better and improve. And I also want to give my kids and my family opportunities and experiences so they also can live consciously and make an impact. So that's why I do what I do.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Faye, round this out for us. Why are you going to do what you do in 5 years?
Well, I'm Faye Coates, and I've been on a path of ministry all my life. I had the call to do ministry, and I got halfway through the formal training for ministry, and realized that I could serve better here, that this is my ministry. God brought me here. God brought Asia here. God brought us, every one of us, right here to help change the world. And what I wrote down was to bring love and light to the world, to create a kinder, healthier life to those that I'm here to serve.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Amen.
Thank you for those. You know, I want to call out something. Janelle, you said, I believe, and I want to be clear, your why almost always vectors back to your belief sets. When you believe something, you do something, right? Love does, belief does. And it's beautiful to hear people talk about divine consciousness, whether it's divine, you know, in terms of a God you believe in. I don't really care, to be honest. In this setting, it's up to you. But what's beautiful is belief. Now I'll go back to believe, belong, become. That's why we start with belief. When you find people of different, look at how many countries. Chuck, how many countries are here? 16 countries in this room. Does it feel like we're not one heart right now? No, it feels really good, right? It feels like one heart. So it proves that the world can be one heart. We don't have to agree on every different belief set, but beliefs are so powerful on the why. And I will tell you that lack of belief is really dangerous and keeps you on iPhone 3. It keeps you on iPhone 1. Am I right, Charles? You start going backwards and you start playing small, Janelle, to your language, and you start saying, I'm an iPhone 3. And I want to encourage you to play forward. Play forward. The conversation's on the next version. That's where the music changes in the movie, not on the old version. Okay, last question I want to take you guys through, and then I'm just going to share a few other concepts before we break for lunch. I think we're doing okay on time. It's 11:45. In the next version of you, and I'm going to call an audible and say, no pun intended, no music. I want you to think about this for a second without any other stuff going on in your head. We're okay to be quiet for a few minutes? In the next version of you, don't forget the blue portion. In the next version of you, what's the impact you make? What's the impact you make? So I'm going to give you about 60 to 90 seconds on that. 30 more seconds. Kim, you have your first hand already up waiting for you. She's saying, I'm first. Okay, let's do 4 answers here. What's the impact in the next version of you? What's the impact you make? Be sure to introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, my name's Miriam Brewer. I'm from Sydney, Australia. The impact I have is affecting millions of people so that I leave a footprint of what redox signaling molecules have done for the world and for animals and for people in burn units and for people in veterinary clinics, and everywhere that I go it's God-given for me, and that's why I'm drawn here, and so I can leave a legacy for my children.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Okay. Super Susie Q.
Hi, I'm Sue Branchley. This impact really, okay, how do I say this? I don't think we really understand our impact. And when we look at it from just that moment of our +5, so I want to say this a little bit different. I want to go back to my -30, because 30 years ago, I was introduced to a product that changed my life. ASEA wasn't available, it's changed it bigger, but a product changed my life. And it went to a moment when I had to ask God, what do I do with this? Do I become brave enough to actually do something that everybody thinks I'm crazy for doing? And I was given a dream that showed the impact that I would have 30 years ago. And that impact was a dream that when I died, that the only thing waiting in heaven for me were babies, hundreds of babies. And I was making an impact with a product that allowed women to have some hormonal changes that would allow babies to come to them. And I was like 35, and I remember waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning from this dream and saying, what if by the time I'm 70 or 80 years old when I die, that there really are that many impacts that can happen? And I went and I quit my job that day because I knew the impact that I would make without having to know the details because of that dream. And look where it has led me to make one decision in one day that impacts so many people. And I'm only 63. I don't know. I mean, I could be dead tomorrow. I could live 30 more years with ASEA. It's longer now. But I think that when I look at the last question that you said, and what I wrote down was the first step is you need to know. And the second you know something, then your consciousness brings you to awareness of how big. Like when we first knew about the molecules, then we become aware of their impact. And then their impact, whatever the impact is, then drives us to love. Because 10 years ago, my -10, sitting in the room with Furtis, was, oh my gosh, this is going to change the world. And we have impacted so much. And in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, you have no idea, because you can't see that far. In every conversation, every movement, and what will make this happen is when you love enough. Then you'll do something every single day. And 5 years from now, I'm still going to be waking up every single day because of the truth and the awareness and the love for what this does for people.
Thank you, Sue.
I'm Norman Schmidt from Central United States.
Okay, hold that mic real close so everyone can hear you.
I'm Norman Schmidt from Central United States, and I have like 4 areas that God has miraculously put in to have an impact. And one of them is with ASEA, and that's just come recently. And as I go on my journey in life, I'm sharing ASEA because it brings love and it saves lives. And I work with a youth group at church, and we go on mission trips, and I share His love. And I help them have a vision and see the world for what it is. And He's also placed me to work as a volunteer at the Open Door Pregnancy Center, and we save lives there. And then He has also miraculously given us 11 grandchildren. And
I'm coming after you. I'm coming.
One of my greatest gifts is having health enough to have relationships with those grandchildren. And I was taught, when I first started being a youth leader, I was taught it's all about relationships. Relationships, relationships, relationships. And that has gone into ASEA as well. And I thank God for those wonderful areas, and most of all for my wonderful wife. Because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even be in ASEA. Thank you, Lord.
Way to go, guys. Let's do one more.
Hi, Tyler. Thank you. I'm Christina. My awesome parents are in the room, which I'm so excited about. Thank you. Annabella and Alberto.
Hey, we need to clap for her parents. Come on.
Well, they were always very growth orientated and very focused towards these principles of what are you going to grow up and be, what are you going to be next. And all me and my siblings have always been thinking about the future thanks to the instruction of my mum and dad, who have been incredible examples of personal growth and pursuing your own dreams. It just seemed an automatic thing to go and do after having parents like them. So what is the impact I'd like to have is to inspire our 6 sons to go and pass on this legacy that my parents gave to us, to fulfill their full potential. What I love with your family is they're all different, and with our 6 boys, we don't really mind what they do. And my dad used to say that if you want to be a street sweeper, you're going to be the best street sweeper there is, and do it with love and passion.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do that, leave a legacy for our sons to be absolutely inspired every day of their life. And our family mission is to perpetuate a legacy of love and service. So I just want, when I die, for my life to have mattered. And it's only going to matter if I've made a difference in other people's lives.
Awesome. Would you all just do me a favor and open up the journal and write in capital letters impact? And obviously this will be in English. Is what I want you to write the word. Quickly write impact. And then I want you to always remember, by drawing a line right after the letter P, vertical. And I want you to remember, for impact to happen, it is important that you what? That you act. You must act. There is no difference made, and there is no impact if you don't give great importance to act. So be careful that you don't just perjure yourself by saying, I want to have this impact, and you don't act. if Virtus, by the way, just for the record, the real backstory on ASEA is not without risk. There was a lot of risk. And nobody took more risk. I think Jared, Chuck, others would say, agree with me. Nobody took more risk in some ways than my dad. He went out and raised money to launch this company. He had to sell a vision of something to people, and those people, many of whom you will never know, are some really unsung heroes on why we're here today. They raised the money to give us a chance to do what we've done here. And one of the great responsibilities I feel as a founder and chairman is to those shareholders that started this company with their money. It wasn't just Virtus's vision that founded this. It was also a group of people that invested in it. Anytime you take someone's money for a venture like this, it's called risk. Okay? He acted. He knew it was important to act, to have impact. Please don't run around saying you want to have an impact and not be willing to act. And when you act, guess what always comes with it? Risk. You got to step into the risk. You got to be willing to do something that's a little scary or a little uncomfortable. And I'm so thankful that my dad was willing to take the risks associated with this. Just remember, if you want to have impact, split the two words. It's important you act. Okay, you're not going to have an impact if you don't. Okay, if you know who you're becoming, there's more to the story, right? If you know who you're becoming and you have this really clear dimensional view of the U+5 experience, then you also know and it informs who you are now. If I know where I'm headed, I have a different sense of identity in the present because it's informed by that. It's a directional thing. If I know my son Caleb's going to graduate and leave the house and I'm thinking about me +2 years ago, I'm like, it's time. I've got to plan some things. I got to make sure I suck the marrow out of these last 2 years with this boy. Because I knew from Jacob and Joseph, my oldest two, they're moving on. And it's a joyful thing when they move on. I celebrate their movement, but I don't want to look back and say, you know what? You were asleep at the wheel. So knowing where you're going and becoming also informs where you are today. It also gives you really clear, true direction. And I want to do a quick exercise with you guys right now. Nobody can use their phone for this exercise. Everybody stand up, put your phones down. And I'm going to count to 3. And when I say the number 3, I want you to point north. 1, 2, 3. Okay, stop. Don't move your arms. Don't move your arms. First, look at the tallest man in the room, Mr. Bo Buck. Bo, where is he? Where are you pointing? That way. Okay.
I'm pointing north.
That's a really good comment. I'm going to come back to that, Bo. I want you to look around the room. What do you see? Hey, don't move your hands around. Don't move your hands around. You guys are killing me. Latham, did you move your hand? You started like this. Okay, so keep your hands up. I know it's going to ache. This is like some sort of Pilates class. I'm going to my compass right now. You know where north is? Right behind me. How good are we at pointing north? Did we do good? Did we flunk? I think you flunked. Now, here's the deal. You can sit down. I want to make a point about this. North is straight this way. All right. Who can explain to me the difference between true north and magnetic north? Oh, God. Stand up and tell everybody. Can I get a microphone over here? Sorry, I thought we were done with microphones. I want to make sure you're clear on something. First off, is there a difference between true north and magnetic north? Yes. All right. How comfortable would you be to stand up here with a microphone and tell us all the difference? Not too many. So this is risky, but to have an impact, it's important you act. Okay, here we go. Thanks to Kim. Yay, Kim. What's the difference between true north and magnetic north?
The declination difference from surveying, civil engineering background, or whatever, it changes because of magnetic fields in the area. Over a period of time, it fluctuates. So as people do actually surveying and engineering work, they have to know what that is. So in the process of doing that, they have to adjust. Pilot uses it like you do when you fly. The airports actually change the numbers on the runways periodically because the magnetic compass for that runway axis is changed. So I'm a pilot, so this I deal with.
Beautiful, thank you. Well done, better than I hoped. And with that, we're adjourned. Let's go to lunch. Thank you. I got to think about that. What's pointing on my compass? What's my compass? True or magnetic? And the first word you used was declination. There's a difference. If I start a little bit off, destinationally, I can end up way off. Okay, that guy Bob Goff is a sailor, and he told the story of a race from California all the way out to Hawaii, and said the navigation guy couldn't do it right down the stretch, so he was asked to do it, and he pulled out the map and just drew the straight line, and they were way off. Because there's a difference between true north and magnetic north. Now I got to be really honest and vulnerable with you guys. I've been looking back on my life, and I've been saying, when were the times when magnetic north was pulling me off of my true north? When were the times when another person, an opportunity, a distraction has pulled me just a little bit off of my true north because it was so magnetic. It was pulling me. And I think we owe it to ourselves to say, if I know what me plus 5 looks like, I need to spend some real clear time on true north. And I need to use my true north and the clarity of that true north as my own measuring reference against new opportunities or time or use of my resources. I just got to say it's off true north for me. So I do want to challenge you guys. We're not going to do this now for time, but I need you to spend some time and say, what's my true north? Now, let's just throw some out. What can true north be? What shape could it take? Or language could be put on true north? Principles and truths, core values, right? So the true north stuff is the deep, by the way, when we did superpowers, Chuck's superpower, Charlie, are you still there? I don't know if he's over there asleep. Hey, good, welcome back. What's your superpower, Chuck? Oh, and the second one? Cultural compass. Cultural compass is kind of the true north concept. You have a really clear distinction on where right and wrong live. Okay? True north for me, grandpa is in the definition for true north. Right? True north for me, father is in the definition of true north. For me, faith is in the true definition of my true north. And you know what's really cool for me is never, ever before have I been so clear and passionate and convinced and convicted about the true north of this company. Mark my words. I'm not asking for your opinion. This is going. It's started. It's off the launching pad. And I'm not really interested in the editorial page about anyone telling me what they think this is. Like, we're going to make this happen, and it's going to go. And it's going to go because of us. Right? I get the privilege of working with 2 of my very best friends every day. I can expand that to 10 of my best friends. But sitting on the board, which I do with Chuck and Jerem, I will tell you these are 2 of my very, very dearest friends. And when you put the 3 of us in a room, it's very rare, Jerem, and you can counter me if you disagree, it is very rare that when we talk, we aren't on the exact same true north with each other. And the true north is never to hurt you, ever. It has never been to hurt you. It is to protect you. It is to preserve your opportunity. It is to be very careful and humble and sober about the way we drive and direct the resources we have been created really as stewards for right now. It's how we feel. It's not ours. The possessive pronoun of mine doesn't exist. It is a stewardship of something we have been given, and it must flourish. It must move forward. And so it's amazing. By the way, I have to add Justin Wilson to that. I've watched the next versions of Justin play out. I have to add Karen Riley to that. And for that matter, the Kim Larsons of the world. Kim, you have been an amazing player in this company's history, right? And I say that, and I say, you know what's amazing about these people is we get in a room, and the true north is not hard to find. It feels really common. Magnetic, pulling us different directions. It's very rare that I feel like we're magnetically pulling apart. We're pulling really closely together, and we're getting better. It's getting better. So I just want to challenge you to think about, are there magnetic norths? And in really navigation, you can kind of use both almost as proxy. I get the concept. But long term, right, you can get off center pretty quickly if you don't know what your true north is. And that can be principles, values, it can be people in your life. I just want to challenge you, in U+5, in that next version, make sure your true north is clear so you know what to say no to and you stay on the path. Now, I just want to pivot from the becoming side to the belonging side. I'm kind of going backwards. And there's a reason for this, because this is a fair question. How can we now help each other to become the truest next version of ourselves? Right? If you think about this, now there's this really interesting interplay of a whole bunch of me+5s in a room. And oddly enough, the great secret of becoming, I wrote it as a line in the song for my dad, says, the lives we touch make us who we are. So to the degree that your U+5 moving forward is just you on an island, we know that. We know that Ubuntu says, I am because we are. So the me+5 is going to be because we+5. It must include all of us moving forward. Consider this from this gentleman that wrote this book. He says, you become like the people you hang around. And to a great degree, you end up going where they're headed. So when there's someone else behind the steering wheel, it should be someone you trust with your life, because you've given a great deal of control over your life to them. If that's true, it's a pretty good idea to ask people where they're going before you get in with them. Now, where does this apply? Guys, if you are trying to build a team, then you need to do this U+5 with your Big Ten, like your top Big Ten, and say, help me understand U+5. What do you want to become? Why do you want to do it? What's the impact you see yourself having? How would you declare and describe your true north? And guess what? When those two things start to come together and two people merge those things together, you start to make a decision that, you know what, I think where you're going or want to go is where I want to go. Let's go together. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about that. People don't grow where they're informed. They grow where they're accepted. That's why belonging matters here. If people don't feel accepted, they're not going to grow. My son the other night came home kind of bummed. This is Noah. And it was one of those moments every little boy has at some point, and he's texting his buddies and he can't get a reply. So he just, on his own accord, walks down the street to a friend's house, knocks on the door. They're all having a party, but Noah didn't get the text to come. So he kind of pivots and walks home, and Allison can tell he's down. And she's like, what's up? And he goes, oh, I just feel kind of bummed, right? I've been texting the guys since after school, like, what's going on tonight? Because he has like a pack of friends. But somehow somebody ends up having a party, and guess who's not there? And you start going, yeah, I know what that feels like. Yeah. So we talked about it. What am I saying? If you don't feel like you're accepted or even invited, you don't feel like you can be you. You don't feel like you can grow. So remember, training somebody on the comp plan, right, and training them on the products is not what I'm talking about here, guys. That's called informed. There's a different form of teaming that involves acceptance. And that acceptance is an investment. And do not call yourself a leader in any sense of the word if you're not willing to invest in these people and share where you're going and ask where they want to go so you can confidently say, we should probably go together. It's just the most obvious thing. And yet we get overemphasis on the money, right? And you overemphasize that and you think, well, that's where we're going. No. There's so many people with tons of dough that are really unhappy. People aren't necessarily looking just to scratch that itch. I get the whole notion that money's kind of close to air and food. I understand that. But you owe it to yourself if you want to lead people to say, hey, where are you going? What's U plus 5 look like? Let's talk about that. That's the conversation I want to have. Let's have a chat with U plus 5 and talk about we're there. Why do you do what you do? What's the impact you're going to have? What do you want to become? How would you describe True North? Now you start vibing, and then something spiritual starts to happen. You start to team. Okay? I know you guys are hungry. You okay?
Yes.
Everybody okay? Breathe through your nose and out through your mouth so I know you're alive. You okay? I'm almost done, trust me. We should speak the words to each other that point us to the next version. It's my job to look at you and say, do you know how good you are? There's a little boy on James's basketball team by the name of Cruz. Man, he's cute, skinny. But I watch Cruz shoot baskets in the warm-ups. He has the most beautiful left-handed shot. He gets in the game and he locks. So every game, I go to Cruz. And I go, Cruz, you have the prettiest shot on this whole team. And you are killing me. I want you to miss. The first thing I want you to think about when you get the ball is shoot the ball. Unless you're at half court, shoot the ball, right? And this little boy, his dad comes up to me after the game and says, Tyler, I got to say thanks to you. Because we tell this kid driving home every time after a game, come on. But what? We have to speak the words to each other that point us to the next version. The next version of Cruz is scoring and feeling better about himself. And I got to tell you, this isn't about basketball for me. It's about a boy walking out of an experience saying, I feel better about me. I believe in me. Okay? So please be careful that you come to these events. If you're not dropping coins into the deposits of other people's next version, then start. Sit down and say, I owe you this. Pull some change out and drop it in and make a deposit and say, you are so amazing at this. You're so good at this. This is who you are. Bob Goff tells the story 38 years ago. A guy said to him, because Bob arrived at a meeting on time, and the guy looked him in the eye and said, you honor me by being on time for this meeting. Thank you. He said, I never am late. And it was from that one moment that someone spoke into that version of myself, which points to what? It says this, the words we say about each other, they don't describe who we are. They actually shape us. This is clay. By telling him that he honored him by being on time, it shaped him into a punctual person. He was always on time. This is true of adults. The clay's a little harder as you get older. The paint's a little wetter or the clay's a little softer with kids, but not really. It's the same. We're all looking for someone to breathe and speak into us the truth about that next version. And we owe it to each other, for crying out loud. You don't belong to each other if you're not willing to take the time and find that word to say and give it to somebody. This is the fuel of the future, is the words we use about each other. It's the stuff that's going to shape us. And we got to quit coming at this with iPhone 1 language. And iPhone 1 getting wrapped around the axle of some mistake I made. I don't care. I want to tell you where you're going. So use words to shape. Understands that words of encouragement have power. When you not just tell someone they can do it, tell them you believe in them. And tell them why. And if you can't say why authentically, it's because you're not investing in conversations to know them. You need to invest in time and energy to know them. Think of it this way. Words can launch us. They can launch us. The first full calendar year of my career in the insurance industry, I was going to quit mid-year. I was just frustrated. I went to an event, I came back, and I decided, and it was an event that kept me in the game, by the way, just like our annual convention, events matter. And I said, I'm not quitting. And for the next 6 months, I had to make up a way, way big gap to finish the year strong and be recognized as someone they would keep on the team. I worked my guts out. In the last month, I think I sold like 40 some odd accounts to meet my target. Like, I was just going nonstop. And on January the 2nd, I got a phone call from my then boss. And it said, I just wanted to say, I've come in after the break and I'm reviewing the December results. I'm utterly amazed with your December effort and your last quarter effort. He said, don't think for 1 second I didn't watch it happen. Don't think for 1 second it's lost on me what you did. So you get that voicemail, not a text message back then. What do you do with that? I saved it. After listening to it 3 or 4 times to make sure I heard the inflection and the punctuation and all these things, I'm like, right on, this is feeling pretty good. Let's play that back again, and I played it back again. It's not lost on me what you did. I've been watching. Incredible achievement. Play the message again. And I saved it. I saved it for years. We can do this. Ordinary people like you and me can launch. 3 months later, I was the sales manager for that man. 18 months later, I had the #1 sales team in the country because he launched me. He was just like, you got this, man. I watched you do it. You can do this. You're not on trial. Nobody's questioning who you are. You got this. We owe that to each other. There's a really beautiful story he tells that says he walks into a store as a little boy to get some candy as a kid. He would always go into this small candy shop. Same guy was always there, and it was always when his dad would give him some loose change. And he would pick out his candy bar or what he wanted. He'd set it up on the candy store shelf, a cabinet or counter, and he would start pulling out his coins. And he'd drop them down. He says, I've never forgotten this as long as I've lived. The gentleman at the store who knew me every week started counting with me, and I was 1 penny short. And he looked at me and he says, we're 1 penny short. And the boy looked up like, oh. And then he looked back down at the pennies, and he found the shiniest penny. And he said, but shiny pennies are worth double. And he slid the penny around again like it was 2 pennies and said, we're good. When words are spoken by kind people, they endure, don't they? He was 7 years old when that story happened. And so he walks around remembering every day, shiny pennies are worth double. We can be kinder to each other. We can speak into each other the truths and the kindness that is essentially the fuel of our own futures. It's the fuel that says, I'm going to iPhone 11, and I'm done with iPhone 4. I'm safe here. I belong here. I'm accepted here. And that's where the growth starts to occur. All right. I would hope that in the process of getting input and words from other people, you're careful to just listen for the true voices and not the loud ones. There's a lot of voices on the internet that are loud, that are rude, that are, I call them haters. And there's some of that inside of ASEA we could do a little without sometimes. I hear stuff and I'm like, that's not who we are. You wonder why we, by the way, this costs money, the stage, that monitor, those lights, the food, it costs money. So what does that mean? It means we're investing time to teach this culture so that we all preserve it. It doesn't happen on its own. We need to be careful sometimes, and this is good advice for me and for all of us, because we sometimes get phone calls from the field or other key stakeholders that are loud, but not always the truest. And we need to be careful with each other to listen carefully for the truest voices. Okay, I'd like you to consider 1 or 2 more concepts. I think we're doing okay. Let's take a look. Ooh, you're 9 minutes away from caloric consumption. We should stop asking this self-centered question of how is your life working? Like, I am the egocentric center of my own universe, and typically I make my life work for me. The question we should be asking is for those around you. if we were really living this ethos and really trying to be leaders on the road to Diamond, the only question we should ask is, how is my life working for those around me? It should start with your significant other. I don't care how much scar tissue you have in that relationship, reboot it and get off iPhone 4 and say, how is my life working for my wife? She deserves that. The best case scenario is when my wife's asking the same question and we're meeting in the middle and trying to make each other's life work for each other. But what about you as leaders? Are you really thinking about, how is my life working for and with those around me that I care most about? And don't do that on your terms. Meet them on their terms. Be open to feedback and really try to say, is my life working for those that I've asked to be on my team, that I've invited here? And if it's not working, say, is this working for you? He tells the story of being on the road in his life, and his sweet wife simply just put a sign in the window when he drove home from a job, and it said, help wanted. And he pulled into the driveway and looked up in the window in their home, and she had put a help wanted sign, and it was her way of saying, your life right now isn't really working for me. This isn't working right now. And he had to regroup. All of us, executives, we've talked a lot about this. There are times in our life when the speed and the pace and the energy isn't always working for the people around us that love us the most and that we love. And I think that's true of the people on your teams. You owe it to ask yourself this question every single day for the people on your team. Okay? So last week was my 49th birthday. To quote Ed Weens, he sent me a note and said, congratulations on your 49th journey, or your 50th journey around the world of the sun. Where's Ed? Is he in the room still? And he said to me, oh, there you are, Ed. I thought that was an interesting way to say it. He kind of kicked off my 49th year and said, you're lapping the sun for your 50th time. I don't feel 50. So thanks for saying that. But on my 49th birthday, I asked my kids if, you can tell my family is shrinking in this picture, but everyone else had something else to do, so I took my two youngest boys and my wife Allison, who is an absolute machine when it comes to hiking. She can leave me behind. And we went up to Phelps Lake. This is in Teton National Park. As we were going around the hike, it's early enough in the season at this elevation that the trails are just kind of being cleared from trees that have fallen or been struck by lightning. I wish I had a better picture, but I stopped. My kids were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, look at this tree. And the tree, if you spun around exactly the opposite direction, there was a monster pine tree that had been clearly struck by lightning at some point. And they had just come through maybe a year or two and cut it up to get it off the trail. But I found myself fascinated with this, and you guys know why. What do you notice about this tree? I mean, look at all the tree rings. And so I said to my kids, I said, come over here and help me count these. And they're like, are you nuts? And I said, come on, let's count these together. Let's just start by counting 10. And then I pulled something out of my pocket to measure 10, and I just kept measuring 10 at a time. And my estimation was 235 to 245-year-old tree. And you stop and think about the simple imagery of a beautiful, beautiful tree. And it fits with this concept of this is the next version of you. These tree rings are just like you. It's growth on top of the growth. It's not a do-over every time. There's an iPhone 1 in this tree, but it's not what you see, right? When you look at it and it's grown tall and strong, that iPhone 1 is part of it, but it's not it. What you're seeing when you see a beautiful, healthy, strong, old tree, which is what you guys are and what I want to be, is you see growth on growth, and each year is a new version of you. Same tree, different version. So I leave you with this concept today, which is, would you please give some thought to U+5, maybe U+10? I know there's curveballs thrown at us. I know there's times when what I thought my next version was going to be, for health reasons or other tragedies or setbacks. But sometimes if you look at these trees and you notice stuff like right there, there's trauma to these trees. You can read a fire, you can read a drought, you can see a time of great water, and you can see a time when it wasn't there. All of those experiences compound over time to the next version of you. So yes, there are going to be some curveballs that are going to be thrown at us. There's going to be things that we didn't want or expect. But I still think we owe it to ourselves to contemplate that next version of ourselves and press forward with faith that we're going to go find that expression of ourselves. This is not a game to us, what we're teaching. It's really deep in our hearts. I feel an enormous responsibility to my dad to see to it that this company moves forward, but I feel an enormous and even greater responsibility to all of you. We spend a lot of time thinking about you and really wanting to position you forward so you're +5. So we spend hours on the ASEA +5 meetings. And Chuck, Jerem, myself, and others sit in what we call our war room, and we have all walls that you can draw on, and we have an ASEA +5 conversation almost weekly. Am I wrong, Jerem? We have a growth strategy, clear +5. We have operational and P&L discussions about where the business needs to go. We talk about this +5 a lot. What should that mean to you? I hope it should inspire confidence that getting on the bus with us and locking in your +5 personally is a good place for us to go together, because we're taking this very seriously about where it is. And I will tell you, the next 5 for ASEA as a company, hold on to your hats. It's coming and it's happening. And you guys are right squarely in the fairway of that opportunity. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.